Welcome to my gathering basket. My name is Danelle, and I'm a maker, fiber artist, and homesteader living in Southwest Missouri. And this podcast is going to be, well, pretty much what's in my work basket each week, or at least each episode. I'm not going to guarantee every week, especially during this season of the year. We're in summer, garden is in full tilt, and man, today it's actually too hot to be outside right now. Things are just really wilty, and so I'm inside cooling off a little bit until I can go back out and get some more gardening done this evening. So that gives me a little bit of time that I could pull some stuff together to show you and just kind of introduce myself to you. And hopefully this will be an adventure that you're interested in tagging along with. So, how do you combine fiber arts and homesteading? That's kind of what tripped me up from doing a podcast for a long time, because I thought if I did a knitting podcast, it had to be all about knitting and spinning and that kind of thing. And if I did homesteading, then it needed to be all about my chickens, my bees, that kind of thing. And then I realized that I couldn't talk about one without the other. And I think you'll see what I mean as we go along. For example, let's just start with spinning. It's Tour de Fleece, last week of it, and I'll be honest, I'm not going to make my goals, but I've made progress. I've gotten several things done that I really, boy, they've been on my wheels for a long time. And my goal this year with Tour de Fleece was just to finish up the current projects I was working on. Some of those have been on my wheels for quite some time. Now, if you happen to be in the homesteading group that I'm involved with, then you may not know what Tour de Fleece is. And even if you're a fiber person, you may not have heard of Tour de Fleece if you're not a hand spinner. So this is the time where the Tour de France is going on, and a lot of spinners have decided that they're going to treadle, they're going to pedal along with the bike riders, the racers, and instead of racing a bike, we're racing our wheels and working on some spinning projects. I'm not a big sports person, so I haven't been tuning in with the tour, but I usually try to come up with at least a personal challenge or two every year for Tour de Fleece. So that's what I've been anxious to try this year, is just to clear up. I have 3 wheels, and I had a different project going on each one. All of them have been there for at least a couple months, and I thought it's time to just buckle down and get those spun up. So the first one, and this was actually done on my Ashford mini spinner, my e-wheel. I enjoy cotton, but I haven't spun a whole lot. So this year I went to the Ply-Away conference up in Kansas City, just a couple hours from me. And my goal was to look at the e-spinners, the electric spinners, and find one that I was comfortable spinning cotton on. So I did, and I'll get into that more later, but I ended up buying an Ashford eSpinner 3, and I have loved it. I also bought a braid of dyed cotton while I was there, and I just pulled this off. In fact, I have it in a skein just to show you. It hasn't been washed, relaxed. I need to do a lot of work yet with this, but I am just so happy to have this all done. So if you can see, and actually those colors are coming up very nice. This was a cotton roving that I bought. I hadn't worked with this before. I'd never worked with dyed cotton for sure. And I love the colors on this are so intense. Definitely, I've worked with some naturally colored cotton before. In fact, I've grown a little bit of the natural colored cotton, which I'll show you later. But it was so much fun to work with a dyed cotton before. And I'd love to tell you the who and where and all of that. I did buy it from the Yarn Barn's booth. They're located in Lawrence, Kansas. But when I looked up their site, there was no information on the tag. And when I went onto their website, it didn't give any information on anything like this. So I don't really have a dyer or any other information to give you. but I will say it was probably the nicest cotton I have worked with. It drafted so nicely. I spun this very thin. Really, I bought this to try. I really didn't have any plan, so I could have planned this out a lot better. I don't necessarily know exactly what I'm going to be doing with this, but I've spun it, I don't know if you can see that, pretty fine. That's actually chain plied. So it's a sort of a 3-strand cotton. So it's very, very fine. It took me, well, I started spinning this the first week of April. So it's been a long time on that wheel. And I'm very happy to have that done. And especially for trying a new wheel, a new fiber prep, I'm pretty happy with what I got out of this. So I'll be finishing this up, and then I actually got talked into entering it into the Missouri State Fair this year. The fiber guild that I'm a part of decided that several of the ladies were going to go up and enter some things, and they put out the call and said, hey, you know, entries in the hand spinning competition are kind of sliding, and we want to do our part to boost those numbers. So they talked me into entering a couple things, and one of the categories was a plant-based fiber. So I know it's not great. It probably won't win. It won't win. I will be shocked if it places. But you know, for me, I'm pretty proud of that. And if nothing else, it'll give somebody a chance to look at that maybe has not seen a dyed cotton spun up and plied like this. So anyway, that's where this is going to go. Probably, I'm guessing that I'd like to crochet this because it is a nice fine, almost like a number 10 crochet cotton. But I may just crochet that into or knit it into dishcloths because it isn't the most perfect in the world, but it's definitely a serviceable yarn. So that was number 1 on my list for Tour de Fleece. And then the second one, and this is, oh my goodness, been on my wheel. This has been on my Ashford Elizabeth, which is my first wheel. And someday I'll tell you the story of that. But this one, and I don't know, blues are hard to catch. And this is just a gorgeous, intense royal blue that's tonal. It goes almost to navy and almost a tealish cast in places. And I know the color isn't going to come through. This was a braid of 75 Blueface Leicester, BFL, and 25% silk that my friend Peggy of the 100th Sheep dyed up, and I bought a couple years ago. She sells her braids in 6-ounce braids, and man, I feel like I've been spinning on this one for quite some time too. I looked back at some pictures that I had taken of it, and I believe I started this in February of this year. But again, I was spinning this pretty fine. If you can see that. And my plan with this, it's got beautiful shine to it. I believe I'm going to 2-ply this and then probably do a nice lace knitted shawl out of it. Now, a side goal or plan with this, when I bought this, I actually bought another skein from her. It is the same colorway, but this one is superfine merino, 100%. And yeah, you can see it's got little bits of purple in there and some more teal colors. It's just, it's beautiful in person. I wish I could just send it through the screen. It's a beautiful, but because of the difference in fiber, the merino has a little bit more of a matte look, where because it's a long wool, the BFL is more of a long wool, and the silk especially, this is just, the shine on this when it was in the braid is beautiful. So same dye, for 2 different fibers, they actually came out very, very similar, but there's a definite difference in the like a matte and a shine. So I'm trying to decide what I intended to do. and we'll see. But what I intended to do was to go ahead and 2-ply this, spin this one up, 2-ply that, and then knit that into something together like in stripes. So you'd have a shiny matte in the stripes. I still think that's a fun idea. I'd like to try that. I'm just not sure I want to do another 6 ounces of the same color right after this. So we'll see once I get this plied up and ready. This is another one that I'm under the gun. I've got to get this done this week because this is another one that I'm entering into the Missouri State Fair. So that was goal number 2. Goal number 3 is it's not gonna happen. I have another 4 ounces of an Angora blend that I bought, and that is gonna be next on my wheel, but it is not gonna happen by the end of Tour de Fleece this Sunday. So that'll be next. One other spinning note, if I can put this down, another goal that I had, it was not on my wheel, but I had done a single of cotton again. This is some natural brown cotton. I don't know if you can see, maybe against my curtain, I don't know. It's a brown color. It's definitely not a white cotton. Let's see. There you can see the color just a little bit better. And this has not been finished. It hasn't been washed. And from my experience, once this hits the water, you usually finish this with like water and washing soda is one option. The color really intensifies. So I'm really curious to see how this will actually finish up. This is some that I grew in my flower bed last year. So I grew just for fun 3 cotton plants, the natural brown. Didn't have a terrific growing year for cotton. It was a cooler summer and a little bit shorter season than we typically get. So I don't think my cotton liked that a whole lot. It likes a lot of heat and sun and definitely a longer growing season. Nevertheless, I was able to collect quite a few bowls of it. If I can reach again, I've got all my stuff spread around. There's a few of the bowls that I haven't spun. So little tiny short stapled. It was a little bit of a challenge to spin, but I was able to get enough that I had a good amount to play with. The only thing was my plan had been to crochet some Christmas ornaments with my first homegrown cotton, and I really didn't want brown snowflakes. So it kind of sat for a while, and I couldn't decide exactly what I was going to do with it. It was too nice. I didn't want to just toss it. It was too nice for that, but I couldn't figure out what to do with it. So sat around for a while on my little nitty knotty just as a single and trying to come up with a plan. Well, I have been a beekeeper for a while. I don't actually have any bees right at the moment. I had one really good hive and it didn't make it through the winter. So I'm helping some friends out with their hives this summer, and then I'll probably get some splits from them in the spring is the plan. But from my harvest last fall, I actually had quite a little bit of wax. Had some interesting bee activity, and they made a lot of just extra wax that they never filled. It's called burr comb. They filled a lot of, and it's really just, it's in the way, it's a mess. The bees never use it. And then I also had a decent honey harvest last year. So I saved all of the cappings, which again, the bees will never reuse. So I was able to save all of that. And then this year for the first time, I cleaned my wax. So I have a nice block, and do this in a crock pot. And just melt everything down, let it strain, and you end up with this nice block of pure yellow beeswax. It's just so pretty. And I don't have a lot. I've got maybe 5 pieces about like this. So I don't have a lot, but I do have enough for a couple candles. So my plan was to make this into candles. And I got started, got all the wax cleaned up, ready to make my candles. And I thought, oh yeah, I need to order some materials for wick. So I looked at the wick and looked at a couple different sites, did some research on what size I needed and all that. And the more I looked at it, the more I thought, it's cotton thread. I have some cotton thread. And you can use brown for a candle wick. It doesn't have to be white. So I took my cotton singles and did what's called a cable ply. So basically 2-plied it and then folded it in half and 2-plied it again. So it's essentially 4 strands of cotton. And I don't know if this will work, but it's sure worth a try. And if it doesn't work, I can melt down my candle and try it again with something else. But for now, at least I have a way to use my cotton. And again, let's see if I can show you. The cabling is not going to show up. And it's pretty soft. It's pretty irregular. But I think for something that's just going to burn. So I need to cut these in sections and then dip them in some melted wax. That'll give it some body. And I'll let you know how it goes. But for right now, I've got a few yards of cable plied cotton and grown on my little farmette, spun here off the bowl, and I'm going to put it with my own beeswax and see if I can make a candle or two for winter. Okay, so that's it on spinning for the moment. So how about some hand-spun knitting? This is my most recent finished object. It is my first. Now, I have had a spinning wheel for almost 30 years, but I have never done and when I got a spinning wheel, that was the first thing I was going to do. I was going to spin enough yarn to make a sweater. I think a lot of us say that. And then I never did. I played with it, and for a long time, I didn't have access to enough good wool to be able to make a sweater. So in recent years, I've played around. I've bought a lot of fiber. I've spun little bits here and there, but never enough to do a big project. So last year, I spun up this. It was a fractal, I believe is how I spun this, of merino. It's just 100% merino. Again, this was from my friend Peggy from the 100th Sheep. So I did this yarn, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but because the striping ended up so pretty, I wanted to showcase that. So I thought, oh yeah, I'll combine it with something and make that into a sweater yoke. So another friend of mine, Darlene, raises Romney cross sheep and BFLs, and at a fiber show 2 years ago, I believe it was, I bought about a pound of her natural brown Romney. So I got that all spun up, and I thought, hey. So I did a kind of a mashup. This was a free pattern off of Knitty. I can't tell you now what it was. I'll try to put it down here if I can find it. I started off basically with the count for the neckband, and then pretty much did my own thing from there. It was actually a sleeveless vest. Started with the raglan shaping, went down to about here, and then it was just bind off there. And I decided I wanted sleeves, so kind of wrote my own sleeve pattern, and it's not perfect, but it fits. And not putting this on today, but the only thing I have to do for it is I think I'm going to put a couple buttons on here, and if I get it correctly, I did allow for some small buttonholes. So you might see this on me come winter, but I was very proud to actually have a hand-spun, hand-knit sweater finally. And there will definitely be more of those in my future. Plus, it was just fun to actually, I'm not a confident designer, so the whole process of making the sleeves and kind of adjusting the fit and all of that was a lot of fun for me too, and I'll probably be doing more of that as well. Other knitting, right now I don't have a lot. Like I said, it's garden time, so knitting time is a little bit at a premium. But I just started. I finished that one probably about 6 weeks or so, probably more by now. Um, and I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and I said, I just need another sweater on. I think I've decided that garments are kind of what I like. I like a lot of other knitting as well. I always have a washcloth on the go, and I always have at least a pair or two of socks on the go tucked in my purse or wherever. But I missed not having a sweater. So, cast on Carina Spencer's Sugar Maple, and it is just barely started. This is an old pattern. It's been in my queue. In fact, it was one of the first patterns I think that I ever bought. And let's try this. You can see it's an asymmetrical kind of a T. Comes down to a point in the front and then a higher waistband in the back. So it's definitely like a high-low pattern. But beautiful use of gradient. And I've been wanting to knit it for a long time. So when I got a gradient set, again from my friend Peggy, the 100th Sheep, this was my plan. And I actually cast this on about a year ago and did it at a knitting retreat. And casting that on, it's not a hard pattern at all. In fact, I think the instructions say confident beginner. And it wasn't hard, but I didn't have the brain space to set the raglan increases at the right places and made a mistake and I think I didn't have the right size needle maybe with me. So it kind of sat in a bag, and I finished some other things up. And when I just got the itch to have a sweater the other day, I thought, okay, it's time. If I can get going with that, I can still wear it hopefully this fall. And when I see Peggy at the next retreat that we'll both be at in September, maybe I can actually show this to her. So we'll see if I can get it done that fast. But the gradient that I'm using, she has, and I want to make sure I get the name right. She has a whole series called Color Concept Kits. And I have it out of the bag, but this purple violet is my first color, and then it fades just a little bit more blue. And then, oh, it's a good thing I don't have a cat. They're all going everywhere. And then Peggy is wonderful at making these really slight depth of shade differences and combining. In fact, that's how I met Peggy, was in a triad dyeing class. Just does an amazing job. So each one just gets a little bit bluer until you hit blue, and then a blue with just a little bit of almost an aqua teal cast to it. So this isn't going to be quite enough yarn to do the whole sweater. I think I'm going to holler at her and see if she can have another shade or two lighter than this, or even a gray. But I want to see how far I can get with what I have. Her kits come in range around 650 yards, I believe, in each kit. So I want to see how far I can get so I know a better idea of how much I need to ask from her. So that's my sweater, and having just started this weekend, that's going to be on my needles for a little bit. So that'll keep me busy and satisfy the sweater craving that I was having. And then, like I said, I always have a sock project or two, usually one in my purse. Right now, I am just working on a Peyton's Croy. This is the Rose Brown Marl, I believe, and forgive the ends. And this has become my basic vanilla sock pattern. This one is the vanilla is the new black, and it has the ribbed heel. I have done a lot of different heels, and I enjoy knitting them all. But honestly, when people say they have one heel that fits them the best, I've never had this fall off my foot. I've never had it bunch up in my shoe. I don't know what is wrong with my foot, but the short row heel, as much as I love to knit them, and even the flap and gusset socks, I just have trouble with them. So I still knit them, especially if there's something that I want to, a self-striping or something special. I still do those, but I found myself inserting that heel into a lot of other patterns. So that one, I have one done, and the other one is just starting that heel increase in the back, putting the ribbing in. So I've finally gotten to the point where I just pretty much have this memorized. I've done it enough times. And you know, this Peyton's Croy is a very inexpensive sock yarn. It's not the softest, but it holds up, and they're just nice bouncy socks. I have yet to ruin one in the wash in the dryer. Just holds up so nice. So it's become kind of a fallback for me. I love doing all the hand dyed. I do hand dye some yarns just for myself, and I enjoy doing the self stripings. But this one, I usually have one of these on the needles going most of the time. In fact, I was trying not to buy yarn, and this morning I was at Hobby Lobby, and they had a sale going on all their yarn, and they had just gotten a shipment at our store of the Peyton's Croy, and so I now have several new colorways that'll be coming up in the future. So there's my Peyton's Croy addiction. It feels good to get that admitted, I suppose. So, oh, and homemade sock blockers. I have real ones too, but those are kind of nice. And then, let's see, I think that's the major stuff about my knitting right now. The other thing is I do sew, I weave. The latest project, I have had so much fun with this. In fact, right before I started to record, I was out hanging up some sheets that I just bought on the clothesline. I weave rag rugs, and I happened to be going by our local charity shop, and they had a whole pile of, I stopped in to see a friend that works there, volunteers there, and they had a whole pile of flat sheets for like $1 a piece. So I ended up buying several, came home, threw them in the wash, and stuck them out on the line, and then I need to get them all ripped up, and at some point I'll show you the rag rugs that I make out of those. But as I was hanging up my sheets, I was using my clothespin bag, and I thought, oh, you might enjoy seeing this. So my grandma had one like this. Seen a lot of people that said, oh yeah, I remember my grandmother used to have one like that. So looks like a little dress. In the back you can see it's a bag. It holds my clothespins. This is a pattern that is by Darlene Zimmerlin and called Wash Day. So I do work part-time, like very part-time, fill in more or less, at our local quilt shop. And I do a lot of the sample making for them. And this was one, I said, that is so cute. People need to see that made up. So I said, can I just pop together a sample real quick? And she let me use the pattern to make one out of some fabric that I had in my stash. And this matches my kitchen. These are my kitchen curtains and the little vegetables. So anyway, that is, and you know, hanging clothes, I enjoy hanging clothes out on the clothesline actually. I guess it's the homesteader in me that kind of enjoys that. I don't know, there's something kind of fun and satisfying about seeing all your clothes neatly pinned up. So, and then the whole, you know, saves on electricity too, helps. So I was doing that, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll just share that as a quick sewing project. Darlene Zimmerman, and if you're a knitter, you can appreciate how long it took me to not say Elizabeth Zimmerman. At the quilt shop, they have no idea who I'm talking about, but if you're a knitter, you'll appreciate that. So that is my latest sewing project. I also have some quilts in the works, and as I get to the point where I can show you those, I'll pop those into the podcast also. And then into, like I said, this is garden season. I am drowning in tomatoes. So right now, I actually live on what was my grandparents' farm. Now they didn't farm here. We just have a couple acres, and they had a few dairy cattle here, some chickens, a lot of gardens. But they actually did their grandpa was a sharecropper, so he basically rented land, not here on the farm, but he rented land from other people in the area, and then his rent was a share of the crop. So he was a sharecropper. And so we just have a little bit of land, but enough that I'm able to do a lot of gardening. I do have some chickens. We are basically in town now. The town has grown up around us. So I'm definitely more of a suburban homestead. But anyway, my grandparents kind of split up the property, and my parents live next door. I live in my grandmother's house, and my parents live next door, and my aunt is in the back pasture. So my mom and I can together, and they're out of town this week at a family reunion. So I have been freezing most of the tomatoes, like 4 or 5 gallons of cut up tomatoes at a time, and sticking them in the freezer. And then when they get back into town, we will get busy making tomato soup, tomato sauce. If I have the time and energy, I'm going to try a couple new barbecue sauce recipes. We'll see how that goes. So that has been the big thing. We're also picking sweet corn. Let's see. Working on fall garden. Now is the time. We are almost to the end of July, and now is the time that I just planted the fall green beans and cucumbers, another batch of zucchini. So a lot of different little odds and ends, things that just want a little bit more fresh that we can do this fall. Here in the next week or two, we'll start seeds for broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, all of that again for the fall. Around here, that actually does better than in the spring, and kind of splits up the work a little bit for us. So that's garden season. The other thing that I have found myself totally enamored with this year is butterfly gardening. So like I said, my bees actually didn't make it through the winter, so I've had a little bit of a break from that. And we started a couple years ago when I brought bees onto this property. My mom started a lot of pollinator friendly flowers, and they just kind of caught on, and every year some of them free seed, and it's just been fun to watch. And a couple years ago, Mom started some common milkweed, and she said, oh, well, maybe we'll get some butterflies this way. So we started some. Didn't see a whole lot of butterflies. Last year we saw a few more, and this year, oh my goodness, the butterflies have been incredible. I wish they're right. This is my picture window right here, and I wish I could show you, because at any one time, let's see, right now I can see a pipevine swallowtail, 2 eastern black swallowtails, and typically I've got a couple monarchs and a zebra swallowtail. I've had some great swallowtails this year that I've never seen before. They've just been beautiful. Well, one day I was walking across the yard, and I saw this monarch kind of acting funny, and they don't tend to rest for real long at any one point. Well, this one landed on the milkweed and then went underneath and hung there. And I thought, oh my goodness, she's laying an egg. So I crept up, and the nice thing about butterflies, they're not terribly skittish. So I went walking right up, crouched down at the milkweed, and sure enough, watched her lay an egg. Okay, maybe that doesn't impress anybody, but I was so excited. I went running back over to my parents and said, guess what I just saw? And I put a picture on Instagram and basically acted like a 4-year-old. I think I was 4 the first time my mom brought in a caterpillar, and we folded a screen up and watched the caterpillar turn into a chrysalis. It happened to be a monarch, and we got to let the butterfly go, and it just, I was just so impressed at that point. So Later that evening, I got to thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, I'll probably never ever see a butterfly laying an egg again. I almost feel like that I have something. This egg is just special. I have to protect it. I want to see what happens. I don't know. So it was a Sunday afternoon, and I thought that would be fun. I thought this will make me feel like a 4-year-old again. So I went out and clipped that little milkweed leaf, and all I had was an ice cream carton. I put it in an ice cream carton with a piece of tulle over the top and watched that thing like a hawk. And sure enough, about 5 or 6 days, I can't remember now, just about the time I gave up, because monarch eggs are usually 3 to 5 days to hatch, and this one was like 5 or 6, and I thought, oh, it's not gonna hatch. I did something wrong. Sure enough, it hatched, and I had this itty bitty tiny little caterpillar that I got to watch for a couple weeks, or about a week, before it turned into a chrysalis. And then sure enough, it hatched, and I was what they call eclosing, and I was able to release that little monarch. So I was hooked, and I had to go back outside and look again and see, oh, are there any more? Could I see this again? And sure enough, now that I actually knew what a monarch egg looked like, I started looking, and I found more. And I found more caterpillars. So my little ice cream carton, little gallon ice cream carton, was running out of room. I ended up getting a 2-foot butterfly cage, and right now I've got the next batch of, I believe there's 6 caterpillars that are just about ready to go into the chrysalis form. And last night I went out, and on our butterfly weed that we also grow, I found another 6 monarch eggs. So I don't know if you can see that little tiny, right there, that little tiny dot. That is a monarch egg. Impressed? Okay. Like I said, maybe it's just my brand of goofy, but I was thrilled. So now I have another 6 monarch eggs sitting on my counter that I am watching, and in about another 3 days they should start hatching. And I'm telling you folks, it's a perfect pet, because in about 3.5 weeks I let them go, and they're off and taking care of their own. So it's been a lot of fun. In fact, enough fun, we've had people asking about us driving by, and I kind of felt bad because that milkweed patch and several of the other flowers that we grow for pollinators, and it's not just butterflies, honeybees, bumblebees, leafcutter bees. I have seen so many different kinds of pollinators. It's been wonderful. And I'm lucky because where I live, we actually do have a fairer number of wild honeybees. So pollination hasn't necessarily been a problem for us in the garden. But doing all of this just brings in more, and definitely has been an asset for our garden. But some of those flowers do look a little bit like their name suggests, weedy. And my garden is right along the road, and I just felt kind of, I don't know, I felt bad because it wasn't perfectly manicured the way we would like. So I ended up hearing on another podcast about the Monarch Waste Station program. And this is a program that is put together by the University of Kansas, so pretty local to me, and relatively speaking. And they have they have a certificate. So we are Waste Station 20,555. And we are now, if you go to monarchwatch.com, I believe it's, .org, I'm sorry, monarchwatch.org, and they have a map, interactive map that you can go on, and you can actually look up. My little waste station has a little pin dot on it. We have 5 or 6 beds that are primarily pollinator friendly. And it's been fun to watch the hummingbirds. Oh my goodness, I've had so many hummingbirds, and daily it seems like I'm identifying a different type of, I've spent a lot of time with field guides, trying to look up and out there with my camera. The neighbors probably think they've probably decided I'm crazy long ago. Who grows cotton in their flower beds, right? So that's been a lot of fun. That season will be over in another month or two probably, as the migration begins. It can go up into October. I don't anticipate being a monarch mom for that long. We'll see. It takes a lot of time. And my monarch, our milkweed, is probably not going to last real long because, oh my word, do those little things eat. I bring in about a foot-long piece of milkweed every day for just those little baby caterpillars. And once they get bigger and close to chrysalis stage, wow. But it's been fun because they say that in the wild, only about 5% of the eggs that are laid actually reach adulthood. But raised inside, almost 95% of them do. So that's been a lot of fun. It's fun to watch, and if it can do some good with the monarch population, then fantastic. The whole thing, though, has just been a great experience, and it's made me a better gardener because I'm out there on my hands and knees inspecting things. And when you're a beekeeper, I tend to walk with my head down, watching the ground underneath me because I don't want to step on one of my honeybees. And so it's just made me a much better observer of the wildlife around me. And as a Christian, that's also kind of been a neat way to worship for me. Not worshiping the monarch, but the one that made the monarch. It's been a really fun summer to see all the different wildlife around me, to watch the plants grow, to be harvesting, and then be preserving all of that. So anyway, that's what's in my gathering basket, in my work basket this week. I have a lot going on, a lot more I would love to show you. Maybe in future podcasts, we'll get into more adventures. I hope that sparks just a little bit of interest, a little bit of curiosity. I will do my best to put some show notes down below. And if there's anything that you have questions, I know I didn't explain a lot. I am definitely, please understand, not an expert about any of this stuff. I'm just having fun, learning, exploring, being curious about all this stuff and trying it for myself. And if that can spark just a little bit of curiosity on your part, then I've done my job with my podcast. So happy making until I see you again. Thank you. This is my butterfly garden. We just became a monarch way station. Try not to make you sick. If you can see, there's a monarch. And over on the other, I don't know if I can catch him, just flitting out, is hummingbird moth. They are so much fun to watch. Wish I could zoom in, but they are really flighty. And then over here, there's a pipevine swallowtail. Oh, their blue is just amazing. I think it is right there. There he is. You can see that blue. It's so pretty, vibrant. There he comes. And then over here is probably my favorite. You see black and white zebra swallowtail. And then coming in a very, very close, nearly tie for favorite. Oh my goodness. There goes the giant swallowtail.